So I see that we are almost complete, so I would like to start our meeting today. I'm very, very happy. It's a big pleasure for all of us to have with us two experts, one from Germany and one from the IEA, and I think that will be a very, very good round of discussion today with very good insights. One of those two persons is, of course, Dr. Fatih Birol, and the other is Secretary of State Andreas Feicht. I will introduce you, both of you, in a minute or so. These are crazy times, of course. Just yesterday we had the St. Petersburg climate dialogue, and the Chancellor was, although we do have this crisis, saying that yes, we want to stick to the targets of the European Union. I think that was some kind of a strong commitment. But on the other hand, we still do not really know how the end of this crisis will look like. And this series here is trying to find out what can we know about the situation, maybe in autumn, maybe later, we will see. And what can we do to help making all the measures we need, not only timely, targeted and temporary, but also somehow transformative. That's the idea we have, and we understand that it's not as easy as it is in former times, because this time this is a very global specific situations. Fatih, you started, I don't have to really introduce you a lot because everybody knows you, but I have to say a few words. And one thing I have to say is you're not only known by all the politicians all over the world, but you're also an engineer kind of, and you made your PhD in energy industry issues, so you really know about these situations. And if I'm right, you started at IEA 1994 as Chief of Economics over there. That was a great time. Times were very promising. We had the reunification just behind us, opening European markets, hardly any problems in sight, maybe, I don't know. And then after a couple of crises in this century, 2015, you decided, well, maybe it's the worst things are over. Now I can become Executive Director of IEA. And then now look at this, what has happened. I think situation is not only difficult, I think it's a mess. It's a double mess from your perspective, I guess. We have the oil situation, the Corona crisis. We have all the promises for climate change on the table. And the question is, what's really going on in this world, and what can we do best and to really contribute for a good solution? As I know, you tomorrow you will introduce a global energy review. That is, for that reason, of course, perfect timing. And we know that you already placed some statements about the situation we have and things we have to do. Your title today is Challenges and Opportunities for Global Economic Recovery, Sustainable, Secure and Resilient Economy. So we are very interested, of course, to hear what you will tell us in a few moments. But before that, I would also like to introduce Secretary of State Andreas Feicht. It's really a big pleasure as well to have you on board today, because we know, not only from reading the news, from all the other discussions we have, how busy and hard these times are today. So many questions, so many demands, so much lobbying, I must say, at this time as well. So many people who are kind of satisfied but do want more. And I guess it's really, yeah, must be a horrible time somehow, but also, I guess, exciting. Andreas Feicht is somebody, I can say that, who knows how to get things going, because he was CEO of Stadtwerke Wuppertal for quite a while, very successful time. And then 2.5 years ago, I think, he followed the call of the minister to go in this, well, difficult job. It was already a difficult job 2.5 years ago, but now it's kind of even more difficult. But I don't want to say much more, just to maybe finish that both of you have to leave at around 6 o'clock today. Full understanding, of course, but that is the job for us, of course, then to keep discussions focused later on, and very much looking forward to you, Andreas Feicht, and then to you, Fatih Birol, and then to the discussion, Mr. Feicht.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas Kuhlmann, for this warm welcome. I'm in this job since 15 months, indeed, 15 months, not 2.5 years. So that might be feeling because sometimes I think times counts double in this job, but it's not that long. Dear Mr. Kuhlmann, dear Fatih Birol, thank you very much for the warm welcome and for the opportunity to participate at this digital colloquium in these demanding times, as you mentioned. The exchange with various stakeholders from business, science, and society is, of course, extremely important for governments. Although we can, and unfortunately, that we can see each other face to face and talk to another in a physical way, this digital possibility gives us the opportunity to stay in touch. Although we have to follow the proposals and recommendation of social distancing. So it's very important to have this exchange. It's the basis of our work. In times like these, however, there are unfortunately fewer opportunities for those important encounters, as I mentioned, and therefore this, I think, is very valuable. Currently, we are in the phase of acute crisis management. We focus on security of supply and resilience because secure energy supply is essential in such a crisis. Fortunately, and this is not only what we have to see in Germany, but also throughout Europe, our energy system has so far proven to be very robust, not only in the supply of oil and gas, but also, of course, in the power sector. We have, because of a very high drop, a very big drop of energy consumption, we have a very high share of renewables in the system, an average between 50–60%. What I can say, and also in talks with the authority, Bundesnetzagentur, but also with the grid operators, that our energy system, our power system in Germany is very resilient and very robust. So we don't have any concerns of a drop or a problem of security of supply, which is, I would say, a very good message. Nevertheless, measures for fighting the corona pandemic had practical impacts, not only, but also on the energy sector. Therefore, we had to tackle possible consequences of the restrictions of free movement, as I said, social distancing, curfews, border closures, in particular for operating and maintenance processes, supply chains, and cross-border traffic. We have a very highly integrated European market, and people are commuting over borders, so that was a very high concern in the beginning of the crisis, but we managed it very good with our European partners so that people can commute and can do their work on site, on power plants, refineries, and so on both sides of the borders. But that is not easy to maintain in this crisis circumstances. But we also observe the economic situation of the energy sector very closely. There is pressure from various sides. On the one hand, falling energy prices, but on the other hand, also missing payments as a consequence of the overall economic difficulties. These difficulties are serious, of course, but not as serious as the problems other sectors in the economy have. So it is also a very robust business model the energy sector has. Fortunately, as we together know, other sectors, other companies are in much deeper problems than the energy sector. But we have an eye on that because security of supply is not only a technical or physical question, but also an economic question. In the short term, we have to ensure companies stay afloat. Therefore, it is crucial that programs providing liquidity are also accessible for energy companies. But even when the lockdown is gradually loosened within the next few months, a return to business as usual cannot be expected very soon. This implies further challenges, for example, for carrying out planning and approval procedures for important infrastructure projects, very important for Germany, network expansion of renewable energies. In particular, public participation, which often requires physical presence, may not always be possible. And in order to prevent delays in infrastructure projects, we are preparing temporary adjustment of the legal framework to enable public participation in other suitable ways. And I can say that today we have been in cabinet to that this legislation can take place, so that we will shift digitalization into those participation framework for, let's say, especially the grid expansion. Very important projects for the German Energiewende. Also with Corona, the compass for our energy policy continues to point in the same direction. Fighting climate change remains as important as before the pandemic, of course. As Chancellor Angela Merkel yesterday pointed out in the Petersberg climate dialogue, this is, of course, important, and it stays important. The decisions taken by our National Climate Cabinet in September last year therefore remain valid. A combination of a national system of carbon pricing for heating and transport, supplemented by multiple incentives in the form of extensive funding, promises important impulses for sustainable development of our economy after Corona. So this has to be maintained and not postponed. The same applies to the European Green Deal. The Green Deal is a strategy of growth for our economy if we act responsibly. We should concentrate on measures of the Green Deal that stimulate the economy, increase competitiveness, and generate jobs. I see the opportunity and enormous potential for joint wind offshore projects and decarbonized gases, hydrogen, such as green hydrogen, to take the energy transition to the next level. That's why we also work on our national hydrogen strategy, and we want to push it through cabinet within the next weeks. During the German EU Council presidency in the second half of 2020, we want to push forward the discussion on these topics. And what I heard from the Commission, from the European Commission yesterday in our informal Energy Council meeting, the Commission will propose recommendations and proposal on these topics, especially offshore and hydrogen. But our engagement will also address the international level. Germany is well positioned. We can build on our bilateral engagement in multiple energy partnerships and dialogues throughout the world. And we should work on that level also in the future. European and international cooperation was extremely important even before the Corona crisis. In these times, it becomes clear once again that the Corona pandemic and its consequences, as well as climate change, can ultimately only be effectively countered by joint action. And I'm very grateful and thankful to Fatih Birol and his team that he takes the opportunity and pushes us to these informants to dialogue on this topic. Last Friday, we met also on the video screen to discuss it on a global and international level, from colleagues from India to Canada, from North Zealand to Sweden, so throughout the world, and this is very, very helpful and fruitful. We need to address new challenges for energy transition with Corona. This is, on the one hand side, for some businesses, a good message in these days, but it can also feel us to concerns. Falling prices of fossil fuels on the one hand, and more tight financial scope for investments in renewable energies and green technologies on the other. So this is one of the main challenges we have to face. How long will this drop of oil prices will last? This is a problem for the oil producing countries, or for example, especially because of for their budgets and their financial potential. But on the other hand, that can harm investments in energy efficiency or in all the other questions. So this is something we have to have an eye on. I'm therefore very much looking forward to your input, Fatih, and on the subsequent discussion from a more global and international level and point of view. This is very fruitful and gladful for us. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward for a good discussion. Thank you very much.
Vielen, vielen lieben Dank. Thank you very much, Mr. Feicht. Well, Fatih, so what you heard is strong commitment from Germany, from the Secretary of State, from the Chancellor yesterday. Also cooperation as an issue, and of course the oil crisis. Now the floor is yours. You will do the best out of it. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much once again for inviting me. It is, when I look at the list of participants, it's very humbling to be with you today. Mr. Kuhlmann, thank you very much. The original idea was to visit the DENA in Berlin, but we are doing it this way, and it is great to also hear Mr. Feicht and his statements for Germany and for the international level. Now, you are completely right. Tomorrow morning, we are releasing a report to look at the 2020. What is happening for oil, gas, electricity, renewables, and the CO2 emissions throughout the 2020. And we have already the real-time data of all the countries for 100+ days. We know the data, we have the data. And for the next 200+ days, we see how it can go. We will release it tomorrow, but I can tell you that the overall message, but I see the impact of coronavirus on the energy world, it's a historic shock to the energy world. I am seeing a historic shock to the energy world, and it will have major implications for almost all the players around the world, and there are some surprises for some fuel sources there. Now, today, however, I wanted to talk about the subject that Mr. Feicht eloquently mentioned, the economic recovery and the role of clean energy technologies. When we look at the world today and the governments around the world are first addressing the most important challenge, the health challenge. And my living in France, Paris, my congratulations to German government, Mr. Feicht and his colleagues, for doing an excellent job there. But in addition to the challenge in terms of the health, there is the other one, building, creating firewalls around the economy, unemployment, small businesses, and others. These are the two challenges. But third, the topic of my remarks today, many governments around the world, US, Canada, Europe, China, India, they are preparing once in a generation in scale stimulus packages, trillions of dollars. And what kind of economic recovery packages are they? How are they designed? Will be enormously consequential for many years to come, and they are going to make in a very short order. This is prepared in Europe, in Canada, in China, India, United States, everywhere. And it is the reason why IEA was the first, or one of the first voices internationally saying these stimulus packages need to include clean energy incentives. And I call it a historic opportunity. Why I call it historic opportunity? For two reasons. One, the amount of money we are talking about is trillions of dollars. This is number one. Second, when you look at a normal year, for example, 2019, 2018, when you look at all investments in the energy world, for all the countries, global energy investment for oil fields, refineries, renewables, transmission lines, everything put together, more than 70% of these investments are made by governments, either directly or as a response to government policies, such as feed-in tariffs for renewables, or efficiency regulations by governments. So governments, even in a, I would again say, a regular year, more than 70% of the investment in the energy sector are driven by the government. So it is very important. Now, we are, after we make this position, we are working with many governments, including the Commission, with Mr. Timmermans and his team, many governments in Europe, in North America, China, India, Indonesia, very closely, how to put the clean energy investments in these stimulus packages. But we are very careful. I know that I have to try to convince the energy ministers, climate ministers. It is easier, but I have to convince the finance ministers as well. It is not only energy and climate ministers. Finance ministers should be convinced that the policies for efficiency and the others would also help the economic recovery, not only for the environment. So therefore, when we make the suggestions to governments, we have three criteria in mind. First, these policies in the stimulus packages, how much they will create jobs, because we all know that unemployment will be a major topic after the crisis. This is number one. Number two, how they will improve the resilience of the energy systems in the future. Energy security, Mr. Feicht mentioned. And third, how they will accelerate the clean energy transitions, helping to reach for clean air purposes and our climate goals. Now, here, what I wanted to tell you is that we all need to learn from the history, what we have done. And we look at what happened 2008, 2009. Now, tomorrow you will see, it is not a secret, that the 2020 global emissions, we will announce the exact number, that they are in a decline. Now, first of all, I think they are in a decline, but it is not a reason to be happy about, because they are in a decline, not because of the right government policies, because of the premature death of the people, and the global economy is in a trauma. And what will happen next year is critical. When you look at the 2009, after the financial crisis, global emissions declined by 0.4 gigaton. But the next year, 2010, with the rebound of the economy, global emissions increased by 1.7 gigaton. So 4 times higher than the decline the year before they increased. So what will happen 2021, 2022, therefore, very important. And we have to learn from the history, we believe. Therefore, for a sustainable stimulus packages, I would suggest 2 main pillars. One pillar is, I would call it, build on what you already have. Build on what you already have. Here, we have 2 options. One, energy efficiency. The other one is renewables. When you look at the past, in the 2010, United States Department of Energy put huge amount of money for renewable energies and creates a lot of jobs. Again, in Germany, many of you know better than me, after the financial crisis, there was the Wohnbausanierungsprogramm, so improving the energy efficiency of the buildings. And this created a lot of jobs. Again, the energy efficiency insulation of the buildings. According to our analysis, every €1 spent on the energy efficiency improvement of the buildings, 60 cents go to labor spending. And knowing that the construction sector will be in a very bad situation after the coronavirus crisis, the energy efficiency could be, the suggestions, incentives there could be good for job creation, reducing the energy bill, and at the same time helping reducing the emissions. I said build on what you already have, because for both for energy efficiency and renewables, we have already in place the existing legal and institutional structures. We have the legal infrastructure and institutional infrastructure. Therefore, as such, they will be easier to build upon them. So this is the first pillar. The second pillar for a sustainable stimulus package is, I would call, focus on technologies that are ready for the big time coming. For the big time coming. What are those technologies? There are many of them, but I have two, especially for Europe, I have two technologies that I believe they are ready for the big time in Europe and would give an advantageous position to European industry vis-a-vis others in the next years to come. Those two areas are, in my view, emerging technologies are the lithium-ion batteries, and the other one is the electrolyzers for the hydrogen. They are, both of them are, in my view, there where the solar and wind were 10 years ago. They are ready to benefit from a mass production, bring the cost down, and have a market share in the global energy markets. And with the offshore wind that Mr. Feicht mentioned, electrolyzers, the hydrogen, can well be a very important combination here. Now, I said, and I will finish now, I said 2008, 2009, we have to learn from that. We have to draw some lessons, what we are doing at the IEA. But there is one thing different, which is our climate change challenge is much more urgent now compared to 10 years ago. There's a much more urgency here. So I wanted to highlight that in addition to what we learned. So I want to finish here, but again, coming back to what we learned from history, and I wanted to thank once again Mr. Kuhlmann for inviting me. I wanted to come to Berlin, so I couldn't. Just to compensate that, I wanted to leave you with a warning from a great German philosopher, Friedrich Hegel. Hegel said, we learn from history that we do not learn from history. So he said, we learn from history that we do not learn from history. So I hope this time we learn from history, 2008, 2009 financial crisis, and get the best lessons from that and get out of this crisis in a stronger manner and make a lot of use from the decline of the emissions this year and will continue this trend. Once again, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So thank you very, very much. That was very interesting. All your insights from all the discussions you have from all over the world. And that would be the point where I would, in a minute, like to ask my my first question. But maybe one remark from my side. I mean, if I look back 2008, 2009, there wasn't really a green recovery program then. I mean, we had some discussions, but since then, those technologies developed great. I mean, so we have a real boom during the last 10, 12 years, and now we are much farther, as we have on a very different level now, and now we know that many more technologies, and we know there's a crisis coming closer, but also we have more technologies and maybe even more options to do something. So that is probably something which might be important if you look back as well. But I mean, my question is, when you speak to people from other countries, what's your opinion? I mean, do they see the chance, or do they say, oh, Fatih, come on, let's meet in a year from now. Now I have different problems. I mean, how open are they for those arguments, especially outside Europe, maybe?
Yeah. So I can tell you, in fact, Mr. Feicht kindly mentioned a meeting we organized last Friday. About 15 ministers around the world came together within 10 years of time. And among those, there were two giants, Indonesia and India ministers, with which, both of which we are working very closely. They are open to put clean energy in their stimulus packages. It is not only driven by the, in my view, reducing the CO2 emissions, but put their industry, energy industry, in a not in a backward position, but to be able to compete with the others, to build a modern energy system. This was the main driver. Plus, clean air is a key issue for them as well. So, at least from India and Indonesia, I have seen, for example, we are working with the Indonesian government to build a feed-in tariff. It's a presidential decree. How to build a feed-in tariff in Indonesia for the renewable energy, and they are very serious about this. And as you rightly mentioned, the decline of the cost of solar and wind is very helpful here. There is when 2010 global emissions rebounded and skyrocketed, it was mainly driven by the Asian developing countries. And when I look at the India and Indonesia, I don't see this happening. Of course, the big question mark here, what will be the policies of China, the largest CO2 emitter of today? It is an area which I think needs a close attention as well, because Chinese government is also in the phase of developing their stimulus packages.
Mm. Well, thank you very much. I ask in the round, I mean, if there's something going on in the chat channel, I do have another question, of course. But please raise your hand so that we can really take some people on here. Maybe one question to Mr. Feicht, and then also to Fatih Birol here. I believe that the economic framework we have is, of course, leading into directions, and we had many discussions before we made this climate package in Germany and also in the EU about carbon pricing and so on, and we did that move, and now we hope that this will stay. I mean, because then you have a direction for all investments and so on. So what is your opinion, Mr. Feicht, and what is your opinion, Mr. Birol, for the European Union, Mr. Feicht? Are you positive that we will stay on track here with this economic framework? And for you, Fatih Birol, do you see a chance to even make another global coalition to really push this in that situation? Mr. Feicht first.
I found it very interesting what Fatih Birol said about those two pillars, because this is exactly our strategy. On the one hand side, we want to expand our existing programs and strategies. When you look at our energy efficiency, we committed a lot of money, fortunately before the Corona crisis, because we decided in September last year to commit up to 50 billion euros in various instruments, and one very big part of it is changing of oil-fired household heating systems and so on. And what we see, although people are sitting in their home office or at home during the Corona crisis, that they want to participate from these grants and subsidies. So we see a very high demand for energy efficiency instruments. And that is very important to remain to these instruments and to fill in from the stimulus packages which has to come to these instruments. So that I would agree on that totally. And also the second pillar, which is very important and interesting, what you said, the focus on new technologies for the time to come. What we did in Europe, and Peter Altmaier very much focused on that, was a big ICPCI for battery production, not only in Germany, but in Europe. So this is a European project, and companies, they committed themselves to those investments. We had it before the crisis. I'm very hopeful and I think that they will stick to these commitments after and during and after the crisis. And one very, as you know, prominent example is not only what German companies are doing here, but also Tesla with their commitment to build a car manufacturer plant, but also battery plant in Germany. And our commitment to hydrogen, and as a part of our own production of hydrogen, but especially as an industry policy driven program to make showcases and to show that what electrolyzers can do, and of course for our export oriented industry to help themselves for entering new markets for their technology. So hydrogen and sector coupling, batteries, and so on a technological point of view is exactly our strategy. And I learned, if I may add that what I learned from the European Commission is that they want especially hydrogen and renewables, energy efficiency to put on the table and on the agenda during our presidency in the second half of 2020.
Good. Fatih, I have two people raising their hands, but before I ask them for their contribution, your answer, and I focus it a bit more. Can carbon price be a part of the solution, or is it a problem?
Now, I will, since I am in France, I give a typical French answer. Yes and no. I would tell you yes and no, because I think from a theoretical point of view, carbon price is the best to address the CO2 problem, the carbon problem in the energy world. But the chances of having a global carbon price in this condition, in this economic context, is very difficult, I should say, to be on the realistic side. Why I am saying this, we should definitely push for this, but if we put all of our hopes on the carbon price introduction, we may well be disappointed.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to say one more thing.
Yes.
I saw a question. Can we ask in German? Sie können gerne Ihre Fragen auf Deutsch stellen, aber ich werde auf Englisch beantworten.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. So I have Simone, Peter, and Patrick Reichen. Both of you, quick questions and your points so that we have another round later on. Simone, of course, first. President of the Association of Renewables in Germany.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andreas, and thank you very much, Andreas Feicht and Mr. Birol. I'm impressed of the clear commitment to the climate goals, to the renewable energy, and the pillars we have to concentrate on: energy efficiency and renewable energies. And yesterday, a coalition for action called for green recovery based on renewable energy. The call was initiated by the IRENA, the International Agency for Renewable Energy, and they say too the renewable energy can play a key role in strategies addressing job creating, easy to mobilize energy, cost-effective energy. And so my question is, how can we concretely stimulate the renewable energies, not only in Europe, but all over the world? What are the public financial supports we can think on, or the private, to mobilize the private investment? Because we have a good increase in renewable energy in the electric sector, but unfortunately we have a slowdown in renewable energies in total. So we need to stimulate renewable energies. Good. You said it, they are very cost effective, and we have to go on for hydrogen, for cars, for everything we need. Thanks a lot.
Good, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very good question. Thank you, Simone. Patrick.
Yeah, Fatih, good to see you again, even though it's only via the screen. Und danke auch an Herrn Feicht für seine Anmerkung. Fatih, I was wondering, what can we do to further push the can down the road when it comes to green stimulus? We've been discussing a paper, and we'll publish that soon, for green stimulus in Germany. I know, of course, there are actors in Brussels when it comes there, but I have the impression we don't really have a global debate on that yet. So how about, I mean, I know we were talking about a ministerial event in July by the IEA, where I was, where the question was whether I could participate, but I think we now need to have those ministerial settings on green stimulus globally. And we probably need to have that soon in order to basically have that trillion of which we're talking about, and the government spending that is now being discussed everywhere, quickly put into the right narrative. So just asking what the IEA can do here, how we can support you. But I think May, June is the time which we need to use.
Das ist sicherlich auch eine Frage für Andreas Feicht, denn wir haben ja schließlich die deutsche Ratspräsidentschaft direkt vor uns. Ich habe hier noch eine Frage aus dem Chat, Hanne. Willst du die kurz uns mitteilen? Also.
Yeah, there's one question directly from the chat here to Fatih Birol. How will very low energy prices, especially as we see it now for oil, change the market situation for renewables? And then there is another question from the YouTube chat, which is going in the direction of CO2 prices, and why don't we see higher price levels now, or do we need higher price levels now for CO2 prices in Germany and the EU?
The first question was raised by Brigitte Knopf. She's General Secretary at MCC. She's closely working together with also Professor Edenhofer, who just made a proposal for the European level, some kind of an investment fund with a shadow carbon price and so on. But anyway, I would like to give the floor to both of you, but I would start with you, Fatih.
Okay, thank you very much. May I start with the very good question of Patrick? This is an excellent question. First of all, if I can say something which is not very very nice, but I have to tell one number. So we are all hoping to see from Brussels, from Europe, a Green Deal to come. With Mr. Feicht gave some of the cornerstones, how it could look like, but we will see how it goes. But, dear colleagues, Europe is responsible about 8% of the global emissions. 92% comes from somewhere else. So how are we going to make sure that the Europe's position will be a source of inspiration for the rest of the world? Because whatever Europe does will be important for European emissions, but in the absence of an international context, it will not make even a small dent in the global emission trends, to be very frank with you. But it is I am saying it is very important, morally very important. It is very important to be setting an excellent example to follow, but it will not alone will change the trends, because we all know that the emissions don't have a passport. They are coming from Jakarta or from Hamburg or from Detroit. It has the same effect on all of us. Therefore, international cooperation is extremely important, as Patrick just mentioned. So I have two answers to Patrick. First, 9th of July, we are bringing all the key countries around the world to Paris. I don't know if it's virtual or not, but I hope to see Patrick also, hopefully, in that meeting. Ministers from China, US, Europe, Indonesia, they are all coming to see what we can do together. And of course, Minister Altmaier and Mr. Feicht are very much, we are looking forward to have them as well, especially since Germany is the presidency of the Europe. This is one. Second, some of you may know or may not know, is some 3 weeks ago, global oil markets are still going through very difficult times. Why it is important? Because the oil is still one of the, again, the cornerstones of the global economy, and the extreme volatility there will have huge implications for all of us. You like oil, you dislike oil, you love this, you hate this, it will affect everybody. And we have suggested to the G20 presidency to have a meeting, bringing all the countries, G20 countries, to address this problem, try to bring stability to the markets. And this was helpful. Now, looking at the suggestion of Patrick, why not the next G20 meeting of energy ministers focuses on how to build the right stimulus packages for a sustainable energy future, a suggestion that we can look into. The second question coming from the renewable energy ask, and I would like to link this to the question of Mrs. Brigitte Knopf, another excellent point, the current low oil, gas, and coal prices. They will make the life of renewable energies harder, no question about that. The cheap gas, especially cheap coal and cheap oil, will make the life more difficult. Therefore, it is very important for the governments to continue to be part of the pushing the renewable energies. How can it happen? For example, in the United States, this next year is very important because the tax credits for wind is expiring. If it is not extended, it will be a big, big blow. In Europe, in China, Indonesia, and India, therefore, it is extremely important that all the countries give a support to renewable energies financially and also continue to give a priority to the grid access and the dispatching. This will be critically important. But I'm sure Mr. Feicht has a lot of hands-on experience on that as well.
Yeah, I would like to give the floor now to Andreas, and then if it's fine for you, both of you, I have two other people here having a quick question later on. But first of all, Andreas Feicht, I mean, I guess in the G20, this is already on the agenda anyway, the stimulus packages and how to make it clean and so on. But what kind of role will this international, not only inside the EU, but cooperation also with outside the EU, play in the German presidency? Is it already on the agenda there?
Well, on the one hand side, of course, it is important to have a good example, so that and this is a challenge in these times, I must say. So something which worked out very well after the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009 was an international cooperation scheme. And So G20 was established as an initiative of Chancellor Merkel and President Obama in that time, so that there was an international cooperation and synchronization of stimulus packages. Now we live in a world where this is not that easy anymore. We have still these formats, but there's not that spirit of international cooperation we have had in this time. So this is quite a problem. It is on the agenda of G20, and it is also on the agenda of the European Union, on the Commission of our presidency, but it will be a hard bit of work to put those interests together. For example, what Fatih mentioned, the meeting, the video meeting last Friday was very impressive, because there were giants like India and Indonesia, and there was a oil producing country like Canada, but Saudi Arabia, Russia, Japan, the US, they haven't been part of this video meeting. So that it shows us that is something we have to debate on. And but what it makes me hopeful is that those companies and countries who are focusing very much on fossil fuels, they lose a lot of money in these times. So on the other hand, those who emphasize more on the renewable side, they are more resilient and stable in this time. So what is very impressive for me is that the CO2 price, ETS in Europe, doesn't stumble that much and drop that much, what we have seen in 2014-15. So we are still to 20 euros per ton. So this shows me that the market participants expect that we will stick to the climate goals, and so that could be also an example for the global international debate.
Very good aspect. Very good to remember that the world is a different one now than it was 2008, and now you see how important that is in a crisis like this. I have Carsten Rolle from World Energy Council and Christoph Balz from German Watch. I ask for some quick inputs here, and then give the floor back to both of you. Carsten.
Thank you very much, Fatih. I would have one question concerning the challenge of low oil prices that you mentioned. What do you think is the structural effect of these low oil prices on the security of supply? It usually will drive out the high production cost countries, North Sea and other places in the world. But my key question is, what is the role of the US in the future? Is it able to play the role as a swing supplier as it did in the past? Or will their role change for a longer time? Thank you.
Yes, hello, thank you. I have two questions, one to Andreas Feicht. We have at the moment very difficult times for the renewable energy businesses in Germany, especially for wind and solar businesses. And what would be the impulse of the government to support them at the moment in these very difficult times? And the second question goes to Fatih Birol. Yesterday, Chancellor Merkel suggested as an international instrument to get cheaper access to capital for renewable energies in developing and emerging economies. So to create instruments with development banks and other actors so that the interest rates for renewable energies get lower than they are. Would you see this as an important instrument, and what would be the role of the International Energy Agency in this context?
Sorry, Andreas Feicht first, sorry, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Of course, all the problems and the problems in setting all these measures in place and so on, they still remain. So we have the strong commitment of the coalition of the German government to come to 65% renewables in the energy in the power sector by 2030. That remains. So this is for offshore, this is for wind onshore, and also for photovoltaics. But all the other things have to be discussed and negotiated between the coalition partners, and this is still what we have to do, and we are on the track on doing that. So that's all I can say to that. But I would say also that that one very big framework or question mark is to see, for all those who have to have the responsibility and to negotiate on that, is to see that the renewables can take their place and can play their role. So what I mentioned in the first place is we have about now 50 to 60% of renewables as a share in our physical system, and still we have a very high status of security of supply. So that makes me also hopeful that people who are a little bit, let's say, concerned about it, see that it works out.
Yeah.
So for the future.
Lots of experience from our country, at least. Fatih, last word here for you. Let me add quickly to the question of Carsten, the future role of the US. If you have still some time, then I mean, we have funny discussions here on the role of China in this crisis. I think strange discussions. My personal view. What will be the role of China when it comes to a green recovery? The floor is yours.
Thank you. So. I think we have about 3 minutes to discuss two very important questions. But I would say that I expect there will be a huge decline in the shale oil and shale gas in the United States. When people talk about the oil markets, there is a disproportionate attention on what the OPEC plus countries, Russia, Saudi Arabia, others will doing, how much they are going to cut. But I expect the reduction in oil production from US, Canada, North Sea will be a similar order, but driven by market forces rather than the government decisions, unlike Saudi Arabia and Russia. Having said that, I think it is far too early to write the obituary of shale oil. It may well rebound even the prices go up as the technology is there and the know-how is there and the capital is there. But whether or not it can rebound to the previous levels and previous trajectory, it's a critical question. But I believe there will be a rebound of shale oil and shale gas in the United States, not immediately, but later on. So for the colleagues, I wanted to tell you that the oil will be with us for years to come. You may like it or you may dislike it. It is that we are looking for an orderly transition to clean energy. We cannot from one day to another say goodbye to oil. So because on next June, when we just go out of our homes, we cannot say goodbye. There should be a well-designed, orderly transition. Therefore, we will need oil for some time to come. Now, China, what will be the China policies will be critical because China is the largest emitter of the world. China consumes half of the coal in the world alone. What will be China's decisions at home and what their investments outside of their country, what kind of areas will be critical. Sustainable choices or not sustainable choices will affect all of us. If I can give you one example, in Africa, 1 gigawatt of electricity plants built in Africa, 1 out of 3 in Africa are Chinese. So what kind of choices will be made there will be critical in addition to what China will decide. Last on the renewables, the colleague asked I think Mrs. Marquez, we follow that very closely. It is extremely interesting when promising suggestion to create new international financial mechanisms to support the renewable energies. As IEA, we will be fully and unconditionally supporting if such an agreement takes place at the international level, which should be very helpful.
Good.
So I thank you very much once again
Well, both of you need to go quickly. So I just say thank you, let you go, and say a few words to the remaining crowd here in that round. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure. Thank you for your time and all the best. Good luck for all the work you have to do.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
But this is not the end for the meeting, but both of them have other digital calls, I guess. So I want to say some few words at the end, of course. If we're still online, can you see me? Yes, I guess so. Huh? Can you hear me? Yes. Well, very interesting. Das war sehr interessant. Wir können auch natürlich jetzt den Schluss hier auf Deutsch machen, ist ja logisch. Unglaublich viele komplizierte Fragen, aber auch hier wieder finde ich, und das zieht sich ein bisschen wie ein roter Faden auch durch die Runde, eigentlich ein Selbstverständnis, dass eben diese Recovery auf jeden Fall zumindest auch eine grüne Recovery sein wird. Überall Vorschläge, überall ein bisschen Suche. Das erscheint mir auch wichtig. Also es kommt doch sehr darauf an, wie wir diese Once-in-a-Lifetime-Situation nutzen, die bestmöglichen Ideen daraus zu entwickeln. Wir hoffen, dass wir mit dieser Runde hier in diesem Austausch tatsächlich auch ein bisschen was dazu beitragen können, solche Gedanken in welchen Teams auch immer mitzuentwickeln. Ich will es jetzt hier auch nicht ohne die beiden Inputgeber ausdehnen. Diesmal sind wir also nach einer guten Stunde fertig, will aber natürlich noch mal kurz verweisen auf die nächsten Termine, die wir haben. Diese Woche waren es 2, nächste Woche sind es auch noch mal 2, aber dann gibt es 12 Tage Ruhe oder fast 12, nee, gar nicht 12 Tage, aber 8 Tage Ruhe. Es ist einfach alles zu spannend gewesen, was uns an Möglichkeiten eingefallen ist und deswegen ist es vielleicht manchmal ein bisschen dicht, aber ich glaube, ganz faszinierend spannend. Sebastian Dulin, Michael Hüter, ja, das wird eine ganz wichtige Perspektive sein, jetzt auch in dieser ganzen Lobbyschlacht, die wir gegenwärtig sehen. Einmal Arbeitgeberperspektive, einmal Arbeitnehmerperspektive, wenn man es so sagen will. Tom Krebs wird uns auch nochmal eine makroökonomische Einordnung zu diesen Fragestellungen geben. Da freue ich mich auch sehr drauf. Und dann am 14. Mai geht es weiter mit Achim Wambach, der sich ja gerade in diesen Tagen auch nochmal zu diesen ganzen wettbewerblichen Fragen geäußert hat. Auch das ein immer drängenderes Thema. Ich freue mich sehr, dass Maja Göpel mit uns dabei sein wird und die anderen sehen Sie auf der anderen Seite. Die kommen beim nächsten Mal hier dann nochmal in besonderer Weise dran in der Vorstellung. Ich freue mich, dass alle mitmachen, innen und außen. Wir lassen die Folie gerne stehen und ich verabschiede mich aus dieser Runde. Bis zum nächsten Mal und alles Gute. Vielen Dank.